Women Today.
Faster, my good afternoon, and thanks very much to Stu and Catherine for Talking Heads. They'll be back with you at midday on Monday. It's just gone 6 minutes past 2. I'm Christy DeHaven, and for the next hour, you are very welcome to join myself and my studio guest on the Conister Rock today, where we'll be hearing the music and memories of the island's own starman, Howard Parkin. Hailing from Onchan and with his sights firmly set on the stars from a young age, Howard's life seems to lead him on adventures at every turn, from live links with astronauts on the International Space Station to being the main driver behind the island gaining dark skies discovery status, to the time when, in an attempt to have a fairly laid-back family holiday, he actually found himself caught up in the mourning of notorious political figure Fidel Castro. But more of that later on. Firstly, I wonder, Howard Parkin, how much of your life do you think you've spent looking up?
Too much. Far too much. It's something I just love doing, and it's not just looking at the sky and the astronomy side of it, but I just love the nature, and I love the sky and the stars and the planets and all that sort of stuff. And it's just a passion that grew from a very early age, and it's stayed with me. There was a bit of a break when I went to college and met my wife and all the rest, but then I came back to it about 40 years ago, and I've been teaching at the college ever since, and I'm now very fortunate I get to talk about my hobby all over the place.
And it's more than a hobby, really. To me, it sounds like it's a sort of life choice, really, isn't it?
It is, really. And since I officially retired from my job as a civil servant at Manx National Heritage with the government, I set up my own company. And it doesn't make a huge amount of money for me, but I get the great opportunity to give talks, give lectures. One of the best things I love doing is talking to children, talking to school children. They're like sponges. They mop up every word you say, and then they come back with the most profound questions.
Can you think of any now that any kids have asked you?
You get off the top of my head. I remember one chap in particular said to me, "How did the universe begin?" This is a young child of about 9. How did the universe begin? Then he came back with, "Well, how did it all begin and what caused it?" And then in the end he says, "Well, who caused it?" And at which point I just said, "You need to go and ask your vicar that question."
Fantastic.
But I always remember he just kept coming back again and again and again until in the end I said, "Look, I'm not going to get into religion and all that sort of stuff." So I said, "Go and ask your local vicar."
But it is a vast topic. It is
Absolutely.
just huge.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned, sort of you got interested in it as a child. Can you remember what it was in particular that sparked your interest?
Vividly.
Oh.
Vividly. I lived in Liverpool as a child, and in those sort of days, back in the early 60s, 1961, April 61, that's how specific I can be. I can even give you the date. It was the 14th of April. And we were playing outside in the road, as kids did in those days. And we were playing football in this road, and my mum came outside and said, "Boys, come in. I want you to see this on television." And we had an old black and white TV in the corner of the lounge. And on that TV was a man walking through the streets of Moscow, through Red Square. He was being feted by millions. It was Yuri Gagarin. And I remember sitting there thinking, wow, he's been in space. Wow. How incredibly cool is that? We didn't use that word then. But I remember that vividly was the moment when I thought, wow. And my interest in space and astronomy is that way round. I was interested in space flight first, and then astronomy grew on the back of that. Whereas a lot of people I know, fellow members of the society and other people I meet, are all astronomers who got interested in space. The two are intertwined inexorably, but obviously that was my start, and it grew from there.
And you mentioned your mother there, but also your father, I think, used to take you to look for meteors and meteor spotting.
Wind on a few years to 1966. The best meteor shower ever was forecast to hit the Earth. It sounds terrible, that, but a meteor seen in the sky. And this was predicted on November the 15th, I think it was, 1966. And my dad, bless him, the best time to see meteors is after midnight. Again, I still lived in Liverpool at the time, and there's a big field in Egbert called Holt's Field. It's still there, I believe. And my dad took me up there at 2 o'clock in the morning. It was a school night as well, to see if we could see any meteors. We saw 3. Very faint, very insignificant. Next morning, over Arizona in the United States, the recording was something like 20,000 in an hour. They got it right, but the position was just slightly wrong. Yeah. But that was it. I was completely hooked.
But you must have seen some incredible meteor showers since.
Oh, since then. I mean, actually, one of the best meteor showers I saw was 18 months ago. The Perseid meteor shower, visible from the Isle of Man in August 2016. 2016 occurred. Beautiful, clear night, no moon, and I just sat in my back garden and I saw about 40 or 50 meteors in about 20 minutes. It was fantastic. That's the best I've ever seen. You do get to see meteors pretty well all the time. I mean, I've just been on a cruise, and I've just been stargazing on the deck, and we kept seeing meteors, and there aren't meant to be any meteors around at the moment, but you always see meteors. But we have a rule. We do have a rule on meteors. If one person sees a meteor, it doesn't count. 2 people have got to see the same meteor.
That's quite sensible, because
Absolutely.
it'd be very easy to just say, oh, I just saw one.
Yeah, absolutely. So 2 people have got to see it, which is okay when there's a gang of you doing it. You're looking in the same direction. But then, I just saw one. Oh, you didn't. It doesn't count.
Does the magic ever fade?
No, not to me.
Yeah.
Not to me. And I will stand there and look at something. I mean, the other night, as I said, I was out stargazing, and we were looking at the Andromeda Galaxy. And I could talk about the Andromeda Galaxy for the whole interview. But the Andromeda Galaxy is just about visible with the naked eye. And if you get a good dark location, you can see it. You're looking 2.5 million light years away.
Gosh,
and
that is crazy.
That is a local galaxy. That is like Douglas is to Onchan on the scale of the world. It's a local galaxy. It's a next door neighbour at 2.5 million light years away.
You can't really fathom that. I mean,
No.
that just makes your brain want to explode.
That's why you say, does it still fascinate me? It does. And you come up with these little anecdotal stuff like this. I mean, how many stars are there in the sky? As many stars as there are grains of sand on the earth.
Wow. And the thing is, so much of it is still undiscovered at the end of the day, isn't it? There's so much more.
We're making discoveries all the time. Even the Hubble Space Telescope, which is another thing I'm passionate about. The Hubble Space Telescope is an amazing piece of machinery. And the things that's discovering all the time. Only the other day it found a galaxy that's only 500 million years since the Big Bang occurred.
Only?
The Big Bang happened 13.7 billion years ago. And this galaxy, they reckon, is only 500 million years after the Big Bang.
You work on a completely different timescale to normal people, Howard, you really do. But that must feel very peculiar, though, the idea that the majority, really, of what we're looking at doesn't actually exist anymore, does it?
Quite possibly doesn't. I mean, all the stars we see we use light years. We use the term light year, how far light travels in 1 year as a unit of distance. 1,800 miles a second, multiplied by 60 by 60 by 24 by 365. It's a big number, so we just say 1 light year. Nearest star, 4.5 light years away. All the other stars are varying in their distance, and the galaxies even further. I mean, the wonderful example I can give you is the constellation Orion, and most people know what Orion looks like. It's 3 stars in a line, Orion's belt. Top left-hand star of that, Betelgeuse, a red star, is about 500 light years away. Bottom right, Rigel, is about 900 light years away.
Wow.
So Rigel's light left when Peel Castle was a garrison.
No.
And Betelgeuse's light left when Russian Abbey was still a monastery before it got dissolved by Henry VIII and everything else.
See, how can somebody not be excited by this?
Exactly. You learn these things as you go through it. And the more I talk to people, the more I learn little things like this. And you just I absorb it like a sponge, I suppose. And it's nice to give it back out to people because most people are fascinated. And yes, like any subject, you can get really obsessive about it. But what I've always tried to do, and what I particularly like doing, is talking to people about it, lecturing it, educating people, going talks to schools or institute groups, wherever they may be, and that's what I get a kick out of.
You must be faced by an awful lot of just open-jawed, kind of wide-eyed people when you talk about it.
Sometimes you get that. But the other week I met a gentleman, and he's just emailed me, actually. I'm absolutely delighted he just emailed me because I gave a lecture, and this guy was in the audience. It was about Mars, and this guy was in the audience, and he came up to me after. He was about 80, and his name was George, and he said to me, "Thank you so much for giving that lecture. That's just how I remember it." And I said, "How do you mean?" He was one of the scientists in the control room when the first ever spacecraft flew past Mars. And I was in awe of him. My jaw dropped because I'm saying to him, "Don't thank me, thank you. You're the sort of guys that made this sort of thing happen." And he says, yes, after it happened, NASA gave us all a photograph of Mars that we'd helped take. It only took 22 photographs as Mariner 4 went past Mars in 1964. But he was there. How incredible was that? What the guys that made it happen.
That is incredible. And we'll talk much more about all of this and space exploration and all sorts of things over the course of the next hour. If you do have any questions for Howard, we'd love to hear from you, 166 177, or you can email studio@manxradio.com. Let's get some music in, Howard. What is your first choice and why?
My first choice is my favourite band of all time. I've always loved this particular band. The Moody Blues it is. And I remember, this is showing my age now, I remember I bought the album, their second album, On the Threshold of a Dream, on the day they brought Interment in Northern Ireland in 1966, I think it was, 67. But my favourite track of theirs, always will be, and I'll never tire of hearing it, is Nights in White Satin.
Nights in white satin, never reaching the end. letters I've written, never meaning to send. Beauty I'd always missed with these eyes before. Just what the truth is, I can't say anymore, 'cause I love you. Yes, I love you. Oh, I love you. Gazing at people, some hand in hand, just what I'm going through, they can understand. Some try to tell me thoughts they cannot defend, just what you want to be, you will be in the end. And I love you. Yes, I love you. Oh, I love you.
50 quid drum.
What a tune. That is Moody Blues, of course, and Nights in White Satin. It is the first song choice of my guest this afternoon, Howard Parkin. We're already having a thrilling time on Conister Rock, hearing all about what is above us, and there's an awful lot, to be fair. Speaking of, it's a really important time at the minute on the island, isn't it?
It is indeed.
Astromanx, I think, was instrumental in the island getting the dark sky status. Is that right?
It was indeed. I'm delighted to say it was. But to be fair, the initial drive to do that was through Manx National Heritage. The government realised in 2012 that the island had an asset. It was underutilised. Niche tourism is what it's all about. And one of the things they identified was dark skies astronomy destination. That's what they called it. I was working for M&H at the time, and the director said to me, can we do something about this? I inquired, I looked into it, and as a consequence, we had 7 sites given dark sky discovery status, which is an organisation in Edinburgh, the Royal Observatory up there. So these 7 sites were designated as dark sky sites, which gave us, there was none at all in the Irish Sea, and there was lots, well, not lots, but about a dozen or so in the UK. So I thought, right, well, if we're going to have one, we might as well have 7. So we applied and got for 7. As a consequence, people got in touch with us and said, by this time I had then retired, I left the government, and people said to me, why don't we have some more sites designated? So we got in touch with the Department of Tourism at the time, and we advertised, anybody got a site they think is appropriate, let us know. I was inundated, probably about 40 or 50 sites. There are strict rules and regulations as to what deems to be appropriate for a dark sky discovery site. So a few got eliminated because of ownership worries, or they hadn't got clear sight lines, or they weren't accessible to the public or whatever. But I submitted application for a further 19, expecting to get about a dozen, if that. I got all 19. So we've ended up with 26 dark sky discovery sites, deliberately, and I made a conscious effort to do this, to scatter them all over the island. I'm not blind to the fact that people in Liverpool or Manchester, wherever they live, can get in their car and drive up to somewhere where it's dark and go stargazing till 5 o'clock in the morning and then come home. But in the Isle of Man, you can come here. You can go on the railways. You can go for a walk in the countryside. You can go to the Gaiety. You can go on the heritage railways. And at night time, if that's your interest, you can go to a dark sky site and see the skies. OK, it's cloudy. It's cloudy everywhere in Northern Europe. And we're in Northern Europe. Like it or not, we're in Northern Europe. And we all have the same problem. But when we get a clear night, it's so special. And that's what I love talking about, and that's why we did it.
Oh, Howard, it's such a joy speaking to you about all of this. And we will be talking much more to Howard over the course of the next 40 minutes or so. But it's just coming up to 20 minutes past 2 now.
The Nation Station, Match Radio.
Women Today.
You are listening to Women Today with myself, Christy D. Haven, and my guest, who is Howard Parkin. We are on the Conister Rock. We're talking about music and memories and the skies above, and it is fascinating. And we were just talking before the break, Howard, about the fact that the island has a number of dark skies discovery sites. Is it 26 or something?
26, yeah. 19 plus 7.
That is crackers. And you were giving a talk about this last night,
Indeed
weren't
I was,
you?
yes.
It was a part of the Year of Our Island.
Yes, as part of the Year of Our Island celebrations, one of the things they wanted to do was give people the opportunity to visit the observatory, which is not the easiest place to get to because we've got access problems. So we had a very carefully, or they, the department, the Cabinet Office who were organising this, had a very carefully planned management scheme to do it, and it worked brilliantly. We had about 100 people up there over the course of the 2 nights.
Because it sold out quickly as well.
Sold out very quickly, and we could have had more up there, and we could have done it another night, but frankly, I need a night off. But basically, what I was talking about, we were showing them the premises and everything else, and on the first night, we did see a bit of the sky. It was clear, but the second night, sadly, was cloudy. But we showed them the telescope. But I gave a talk on dark skies, why the island's dark skies are so good, and then it led into why we need to do something about protecting the night skies, because there's so much light out there these days. Light pollution is becoming a major problem, and it's something I feel passionate about. And it's not just about astronomy. There is clear evidence. You only got to look in the scientific papers. Nature magazine in 2017 in August talked about the circadian rhythm of animals is being affected. Trees are bursting into bloom early. Pollination is becoming a problem. And there's a whole host of different stories. Yes, astronomy is important for us as people. The skies are important for us to see. I have a lovely expression, which is, let's give our children back the magic of the night, which is that of the stars. We don't realise how good we've got the skies in the Isle of Man. I can walk along. I used to work at the museum, as I said earlier. I used to walk along the promenade sometimes. I'd feel fit and want to walk home to Onchan. It's a long way. I had to have a drink at the terminus on the way. But I would walk along Douglas Promenade, and there's no moon around. Even with the lights of the prom above me, I could still see the Milky Way. You don't see the Milky Way from a light-polluted sky. We are blessed. And I want to shout it from the rooftops. That is the Milky Way. There's a lovely story I can give you. We did the pie in the sky at the top of Snaefell for the Astronomical Society.
Yes.
We've done loads of them now. But about a year, 18 months ago, we were up the top of Snaefell. It was one of these pristine, crystal clear nights. We don't get many of them, but when we get them, they're spectacular, which makes them all the more special. And this woman came up to me and said, "It's a pity about that cloud." And I said, "That cloud, my dear, is the Milky Way."
Amazing.
And never, she says, and it was the Milky Way. And there's that famous story in Los Angeles a few months ago now. They had a power outage in Los Angeles, and they all dialed 911. What's that big white glow in the sky? It was the Milky Way.
They were scared, weren't they, because they'd not seen it before. And it's interesting because what you're talking about, I suppose, at the end of the day is also, you're talking about wildlife, how it affects that as well. I'm assuming you believe that we also have a responsibility to the planet itself.
Oh, absolutely.
It's that sort of pale blue dot, Carl Sagan's pale blue dot.
Well, since 1968, when we first took a picture of the Earth from space, as an astronomer, the most beautiful thing you'll see in the night sky is the planet Saturn. That was until 1968 when we saw the Earth from space. And at that point, environmental consciousness became a major issue. And it has been for the last 40, 50 years. Because when we see the Earth from space, this beautiful pale blue dot that Carl Sagan talked about from the Voyager spacecraft or to the Apollo astronauts in the 60s and 70s, and you look at the Earth, there's no borders, there's no difference of opinions, there's no different coloured people or gender or anything else. We're all one people living on the same place, and we've got to look after it. And putting lights up that go into the sky is a waste of energy, waste of resources, and frankly, it's damned annoying, if you excuse my French.
So we're not just talking about the general use of electricity, because obviously there are more and more and more and more people on the planet, probably far too many, and that presents all manner of other issues as well.
Story, yes.
A different story, exactly. But, at the end of the day, people do need light. So what actually can we do about it?
I have no problem with light. I'm glad you mentioned that because I made this point quite forcefully last night. I have no problem, and none of my colleagues have any problem with lighting that is required, is appropriate, and is designed correctly. What we have problems with is lights that are going straight up into the sky.
Okay.
No benefit to mankind whatsoever. Fair enough, airport runway lights, essential, got to have them, no argument. But don't leave lights on all night. Turn them off when you don't need them. Have what we call full cut-off lighting installed, which will save money because you need less lights to light up a bigger area because you don't have all the light going into the sky. They lose less power. They're saving the planet. They're helping towards solving the problems of climate change, etc. It's win-win-win all the way. And as a huge bonus for us astronomers, we get to show the children the night sky, which we saw as children, but people are seeing less and less, especially in the big cities across.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things that we ask our guests when they come onto the Conister Rock is we want to know what have been some of the most momentous occasions in their lives for them. Now, you know, you have had some incredible moments in your life, and I would have thought with all of this sort of awe-inspiring talk of the universe, it may have been something star-related, but you are a family man at the end of the day, aren't you, Howard?
My family is the most important thing to me, and I know that question was coming, and I certainly no hesitation. My wife, my children and my grandchildren are the most important things to us. And, you know, I'm honoured and privileged to have such a lovely, loving family, and I value them dearly.
And your next song reflects that very much, doesn't it?
Because when my wife and I were at college together, of course she lived in Manchester, I was in the Isle of Man by this time, so every holiday we parted and then came back together. So my next song is When Will I See You Again by the 3 Degrees.
And a beautiful one it is. Thanks very much, Howard. Precious moments. We are talking about precious moments with Howard Parkin. You're a bit of a romantic at heart, really, aren't you?
I suppose I am, really.
It's nothing wrong with that, though. It's a good thing.
Absolutely.
Now, one of the things that I bet you get asked all the time, considering the amount of time you've been looking into this, is there life outside of this planet then, Howard? I want to know.
Yes.
What?
Categorically, yes.
Okay, now I'm scared. What on earth do you mean there can't possibly be?
If we look at the statistics of how big the universe is, I've already mentioned about there's a grain of sand on the Earth for every star in the sky. I've got to put a bit of detail to this. We used to think the Earth was the only planet in the universe. Well, not the only planet. There was other planets, but the Earth was the centre of the universe. Then we realised with Copernicus in 1543 that the sun was at the centre of what we thought the universe, and the Earth was just a planet going round it. Now we've found planets round thousands of stars. There's millions of planets out there, and there is a wonderful theory called the cosmic anthropic principle, which basically tells us that stars at the time of the Big Bang were born, and then they died. Then another generations of stars were born, and they died. But when they die, they go through a process, some of them called a supernova explosion, and they scatter into the cosmos various elements and materials. Then along comes the third generation of stars, of which our sun is a third generation star. And some of that material from the earlier supernova eruptions is within inside our bodies. We are made of stardust. It's a wonderful concept that we are made of stardust. And when you consider how big the universe is and look at the statistics, we can use the Drake equation, which is it's lost favour a bit recently, because the Drake equation takes everything about how many stars are there, how many are in the right place, how many have got life if develops on them. The last factor is actually the lifetime of the communicative state. How long have we been communicating as a species? 100 years since radio waves have started being used. And now we're starting to use far more fibre optics. We're not broadcasting as much as we used to. And if we were to, heaven forbid, blow ourselves up and we disappear. The lifetime of our communicative state as a fraction of the origin of the age of the universe is tiny.
Fascinating.
So there could, and there almost definitely, I would say there is life elsewhere, but it's so far away, it can no more reach us than we can reach them. I don't believe in UFOs. They're no more likely to come to us than we can get to them. But I do believe life exists somewhere else in the universe.
Well, there's something quite arrogant about thinking there isn't,
Absolutely.
really, isn't there?
Absolutely. That's the word I would use, arrogant. It's arrogant of us to think that we're the only ones. But I know some people think, well, we're tiny. We're just tiny little creatures on this planet. We're not. We're massive. We're massive because the substance of the stars is within us.
Yeah.
Neil deGrasse Tyson made this wonderful speech about the guts of stars being scattered out into the universe, and people think we're small, but his exact quote was, I don't think we're small, I think we're big because we've got stars in us.
Oh, beautiful. Do you know what? In the background, I found a little piece of music. I think you'll appreciate this. Hold on. Oh, yeah, Matthew Southern Comfort.
Absolutely.
Are you ready for this bit?
We are stars.
Couldn't say it better myself.
It's a bit of Woodstock feeling.
Absolutely.
You hadn't chosen it, but it sort of makes
No, but
sense.
it's certainly well worth having that one. That's on the list.
Very expertly faded in there, Christy D. Anyway.
Very good. I'm most impressed.
Right, we're going to talk about your next song now.
Oh, right.
Some of them have to have reasons, but this is just a piece of music that you absolutely love.
Yeah.
Tell us what it is and why you love it so much.
I think it's my era. I think it's my era in the 60s and 70s, and child of the 60s and all this sort of stuff, and the rock revolution and swinging 60s. And I know people are going to say they're not 60s, they're more 70s, but my next track is Hotel California by the Eagles.
What a great one too.
On a dark desert highway, cool wind in my hair, warm smell of colitas rising up through the air. Up ahead in the distance, I saw a shimmering light. My head grew heavy and my sight grew dim. I had to stop for the night. There she stood in the doorway. I heard the mission bell, and I was thinking to myself, this could be heaven and this could be hell. Then she lit up a candle, and she showed me the way. There were voices down the corridor. I thought I heard them say, welcome to the Hotel California. Such a lovely place, such a lovely place, such a lovely face. Plenty of room at the Hotel California. Any time of year, you can find it here. Her mind is Tiffany twisted. She got the Mercedes Benz. She got a lot of pretty, pretty boys she calls friends. How they dance in the courtyard, sweet summer sweat. Some dance to remember, some dance to forget. So I called up the captain, please bring me my wine. He said, we haven't had that spirit here since 1969. And still those voices are calling from far away. Wake you up in the middle of the night just to hear them say, welcome to the Hotel California. Such a lovely place, such a lovely place, such a lovely face.
It might be a lovely place. It's not as lovely as the Isle of Man, though, is it, Howard?
No, absolutely not.
No, definitely not. So that was our next choice of music from Howard Parkin, who we're on the Conister Rock with today. I should really ask you, did you watch endless episodes of Sky at Night?
All the time. Still do.
Yeah.
Great programme. Actually, longer than the space age. I've just been giving a lecture on the history of the space age, the exploration of the solar system, it's called. And it's one of the few things the British can claim. The longest running TV programme started before the first satellite ever went into space.
My word.
June 1957, Sky at Night began. Sputnik was launched in October 57.
I did not know that.
There you go.
And it is still going. What do you think of the new presenters? Are they, because they're not quite Patrick Moore, but are they good enough?
Nothing would ever replace Patrick Moore. And
No.
what we were worried about when Patrick died, sadly, and he was a great friend of the island, incidentally. He came here a number of times. He was the patron of our society, and he was such a lovely bloke. I always remember when he rang me up one time about something. We were doing the stamps for the post office, and he rang up, and my daughter, who was about 15 at the time, said, Dad, it's Patrick Moore on the phone for you. It was a wonderful moment. But he was such a gentleman. Since he's passed away, of course, others have come to the fore and done it. And only a few days ago, I was on a ship with Pete Lawrence. What a lovely man he is. And he only got into the Sky at Night because he lived near Patrick and Chelsea, and Patrick was getting that he couldn't get out and about. So Pete was an astronomer as well, got to know Patrick, and he started helping Patrick. And in the end, Pete now is one of the presenters on the Sky at Night, and he's just carried on the same ilk. It's just great. And the whole thing is just enthusiasm, and it's on every 13 times a year to coincide with the lunar months, not the calendar months. That's why little stupid things like that. But I can't stress enough what a gentleman he was and what a lovely bloke. And when he came here, so he came a number of times, he always had time for people he'd met and people he knew, and children. He inspired so many children, probably including me. Probably when I look back to 1966, it was his programme that inspired me.
Well, speaking of the youth, we will be talking a little bit more about that, in fact, after the break, and also finding out about a very special event happening in the skies next week.
The Nation Station, Men's Radio.
Women Today.
You are listening to Women Today. I've confused Howard now. Did we just because we've just gone out? Did you say we are doing this next song, or are we going to go straight to the other one that people won't know?
Do
He's
the
just
do the
do
first
the other one that people won't know.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Anyway, so sorry, that was just something I should have talked to him about on it off air, but I forgot. Right. So we've just had a message in. I'm going to put this to you, Howard. I'm intrigued to know what you're going to say. Someone messaged in and said, "Space does not exist. The Earth is flat. Wake up." Do you know what that's about?
I do. The Flat Earth Society, no doubt. Because when you look at the Earth, we always talk about observational evidence. Observational evidence shows the stars move around the Earth. Therefore, the Earth is still, and the stars move around the Earth. And the observational evidence lasted for 1800 years before Copernicus changed all that in 1543. But the Flat Earth Society still exists, and hello, whoever you are, nice to hear from you. But I have to tell you a wonderful little thing I found out not long ago. Please have a look at the Flat Earth Society website. They justifiably state on that website that they've got members all over the globe.
Oh, the globe as in the sphere.
Globe as in sphere. So how can they have members all over the globe if it's flat?
Might want to change that wording. Just
I probably have already, but I believe that is 100% true.
I also have a message in from Tommy who says, have you ever heard the Stephen Hawking quote, "The surest sign that intelligent life exists elsewhere is that they've never tried to contact us."
And do you blame them?
I like
that. It's a great quote by Stephen Hawking. And Stephen Hawking, of course, is one of these scientists whose brain is just on a different level to everyone else's, and the stuff he comes up with. I'll give you another one. The most comprehensible thing in the universe is that it is incomprehensible.
Brilliant.
From Einstein.
Yeah, that is brilliant. So we talked a little bit about how you were inspired as a child by Yuri Gagarin, also by Patrick Moore Sky at Night. How important is it then that the youth are sort of encouraged to be looking at the skies?
It's absolutely vital, not just in astronomy, but in science. I admit I'm more into science than arts, and there's nothing wrong with that. People are artists, people are scientists. But children are like sponges. I mentioned this before. They mop up everything you tell them. And sometimes if you tell them the wrong things, obviously you've got to make sure they understand that isn't correct. But I do lots of lectures and lots of talks, as I mentioned before. And when you give a talk to an adult group, they're very polite, and you might get 2 or 3 questions, usually quite innocent questions, but we mentioned before about questions. But children, I did a series of lectures at the museum this last Wednesday as part of the Year of Our Island. And every single child practically wants to ask a question. Sometimes their questions are, my dad knows you, or I saw a rocket launch. But most of them, they're really fascinating questions like how big's the universe, and why is Pluto not a planet anymore, and why are we going to Mars, why don't we go to Venus? And there's hundreds and hundreds of questions. They just want to know. Children, they love dinosaurs, they love space, they love the whole host of things they love, and they always come back to them. And if you can get a child and inspire them at an early age, that will live with them forever. It did with me. I freely admit it, when I went to college and all the rest, I forgot my astronomy, but it went to the back seat, didn't it? But then I came back to the island and I started teaching at the college. And now, I just love talking about it. And that's, as you can gather from our conversation this afternoon.
Well, you're clearly very passionate about it, which is a fantastic thing. I'm intrigued to know what sort of astronomical development has excited you more than any in your lifetime.
The most fascinating thing, it's a fantastic story. The story of the Hubble Space Telescope has got to be the most amazing story, never mind that it's science and it's astronomy. You've got a guy working in an observatory who discovered that the Milky Way is not the only galaxy, but he discovered Andromeda is another galaxy. So the universe grew from one galaxy to two, and now to billions and billions of them. The Hubble Space Telescope is named after him. They launched it in 1990, and it was wrong. It had been made perfectly wrong. Biggest embarrassment out, but drama of dramas, they sent the space shuttle crew up and they fixed it. The launch of the space shuttle crew that fixed the Hubble Space Telescope, it wasn't a rescue mission, it was a servicing mission. Even NASA would not admit, but it was the biggest rescue mission, even bigger than Apollo 13. Because if that had been a failure, there would have been so much egg on the face, budgets would have been pulled and all the rest. But since then, the Hubble Space Telescope has just produced so many surprises, so many results, so many fantastic pictures. It's brought astronomy to the man in the street. And I finished my Hubble lecture with just a series of photographs from the Hubble Space Telescope, and everyone just looks at them and goes, wow.
It's like that one they produced, wasn't it, from the Hubble Space Telescope, the world's biggest picture, which is, it just shows that how tiny we are in the middle of everything.
Absolutely.
And NASA's very generous with the material.
Everything they have is
free, isn't it?
It's free. Everything is copyright free, so you can use those pictures on any website, any lecture, anything you want. And you just never cease to amaze me. Only the other day, I mentioned this about this galaxy they discovered that's only 500 million years after the Big Bang, and that might not seem a lot to people, but that's a huge discovery.
And what has been for you the most magic moment in your career? What really has excited you? Yeah, astronomically.
I can't give you one, I'm afraid. I'd have to give you about half a dozen. If you push me for one, I would say seeing the majesty of a total solar eclipse. In 2006, 4 of us from the island went across the society. 4 of us went to Turkey to see a total eclipse. I talk about astronomy like this to anybody all the time. You just have to throw things at me to shut me up. But during the middle of a total solar eclipse, I was speechless. It is just, even now thinking about it, it's awe-inspiring. And I was very, very fortunate. I didn't take my wife in 2006, and I swore the next time there was an eclipse that was reachable easily, we would go and see it. And we came back, we took the family, all the grandchildren, everyone else to Florida. They all thought we had a family holiday in Florida. The real reason was my wife and I went to see the eclipse in America, in North Carolina, after we'd had the family holiday in Orlando. And again, the eclipse was just breathtaking. It's the most amazing sight you'll ever see.
Well, it's one thing that I'm assuming then you would recommend everyone to do.
Definitely.
So there you go.
If ever there's a thing to put on your bucket list, I hate the expression, you've got to. But we haven't got long to wait. There is a total eclipse of the sun visible over the Isle of Man.
And when is that?
21:51.
Oh, for goodness sake. I don't think we'll be around then. Right, we're going to end with a really interesting piece of music that you've picked for us. A lot of people won't necessarily know. Before we do, there's a special moon next week. Tell us about it.
Yes, indeed. Next, on the 31st of this month, we have a special moon. It's full, it's blue, it's blood red, it's this full snow moon, and it's eclipsed.
Oh my
All
word.
at once.
And will we be able to see that clearly
Absolutely,
from the island?
it will be rising. It will not look any different to the moon we normally see. But it's called a blue moon because the second full moon in a month is called a blue moon. It's called a red moon because when it's eclipsed, where they'll see it in places like California, it'll go blood red. The full snow moon is always given to the first full moon after the first full moon in January, because that's when the snows are at their biggest. And I've missed one, haven't I? What was the other one? A blue moon. I mentioned blue moon.
Yeah, you said blue moon.
So
we can see that, which is absolutely brilliant.
Oh, it's a supermoon. Sorry, I forgot
and
the supermoon. It's a supermoon,
well.
which means it's slightly bigger than normal,
And
which is a lot of rubbish, really. But if it makes people look up at it, then I'm all for it.
And one more question, where is the best dark skies place on the island? Because there's lots to choose from.
There's lots to choose from. There's a total of 26. They all have their own merits. But for me, the best place to go and do stargazing in the Isle of Man is the car park at the Faulty Will Reservoir.
Wonderful.
You get there, no lights, no nothing, and the sky on a clear night is spectacular.
Beautiful location
Stunning.
too. It's been an absolute joy spending this
My
hour with
pleasure.
you, Howard. We could have talked about so much more, but if you have missed any part of the show, we're going to put, first of all, a little video clip on the Manx Radio portal later, and you'll be able to go back and listen to this via the podcast as well. I think it's about time that you introduced your final song and explained it. We're going to have a little bit of this, not the whole thing, but what is it?
I think not. It's 8 minutes long. I just love progressive rock. And one of my favourite bands of all time was Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Greg Lake, of course, is the lead vocalist on this particular track by King Crimson, and it's called Epitaph.
Thank you so much, Howard Parkin.
Women Today